Top story on Iran crisis. Joining me is noted international scholar and commentator Burzin Wagmer from Center for Iranian Studies, University of London. He's joining us live from London. Mr. Wagmer, welcome to DD India. Now, with over 2,400 people killed in the protests, the numbers rising and violent crackdown by the Iranian authorities, what is your read on the unrest in Iran? What is the direction in which it appears to be heading?
Well, the direction as we speak is uncertain. We are in uncertain waters because the regime has gained something of an upper hand overnight in that if it has admitted that over 2,000 are dead, one can infer, and this is according to official IRNA and Tasnim and Mehr news agencies, Persian broadcasts, you can be sure that the death toll is definitely higher. Point number one. Point number two, Shubhendru. We are given to understand, and this is being pumped out as disinformation, that these are rioters who seek sheer pleasure by creating disorder, burning mosques or public buildings and the like, and that they've been armed to the teeth as insurrectionists. But then you see hospital emergency service staff who, out of fear, speak privately, and this has trickled out to the world. They tell us, when you see the cadavers that have been piled up in morgues, that they do not have weapons on their person. They were unarmed people killed as such. The security forces and the paramilitaries, the Revolutionary Guards and the Basij, are luring young people and others into what are called killer zones of particular streets and paths, kettling them in and then shooting them at plain sight. And why is this possible? Well, because the regime has honed its skills over 2.5 decades in getting the upper hand every time such social unrest protests have happened because of a sclerotic dysfunctional economy due to lack of civil liberties and the like. And what makes it more acute now, Shubhendru, is this. The Tehran security apparatus and deep state has been assisted by Chinese and Russian intelligence agencies for surveillance and digital technology, facial recognition, and deep packet information technology, because they didn't have these skills hitherto, but now they do have them in place to even be more repressive than earlier.
Okay, Mr. Wagmer, there is a lot of anticipation around the manner in which United States could act. There are statements that have been coming from President Trump. Now, the latest is that US is withdrawing some personnel from bases in the Middle East and West Asia after Tehran had warned that the neighbors, it would hit American bases if Washington strikes. So, do you see these as symptoms of a impending US-Iran face-off?
To which I would answer like this at the outset. Never take Mr. Trump literally, but you can take him seriously. That is something we've all learned up to now with him. And yes, some personnel have been asked in the last few hours to evacuate Al Udeid base in Qatar. But nothing has been said for the Bahrain 5th Fleet in Manama or other bases in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. But this is also from Iran's part to saber-rattle and up the ante that the entire Persian Gulf is our backwater and we can strike you where it hurts. This is what they've capitalized on always. Plus, oil prices have jacketed up, as you do know, because the Straits of Hormuz chokehold is there. But please remember that the Straits of Hormuz are also concomitantly controlled by Oman. Iran doesn't have the entire jurisdiction over it as per the international law of the sea. So that will be brought to bear on it. And while President Trump could physically undertake something kinetic action, it may not necessarily unravel the regime right away. For one thing, you must understand, during the last revolution, it took 13 months from Jan 78 to February 79 to dismantle the Shah, and that was a strong state too. So we are just into a fortnight now, and you can't simply have regime change. But also please remember, with the Syrian example of a security state, which was a pretty powerful state, at least officially speaking, but when things crumble, they just crumble suddenly and immediately, which tells you that nothing historical is contingent.
All right. If not a regime change, at the same time, would you say that the Iran clerical regime led by Supreme Leader Khamenei faces its biggest challenge as yet in the manner in which these protests have spread?
Absolutely. Because the social contract is completely frayed. That needs to be stated at the outset. Despite differing contentious Iranian voices of this point or that point, one thing on which they all are agreed, whether in Iran, within the Islamic Republic today, as I am on air, or in the Iranian diaspora on 5 continents, one thing is there, that the social contract with the leadership is completely broken. And on that particular acute point, there is no point of return, because there is immense talk, even at the middle ranking levels, that Khamenei could or should step down. That is the Faqih, as he is the supreme leader, the Rahbar. He ought to step down. But then what we do envisage, if the regime remains intact, Shubhendru, and doesn't collapse, and this is what we have been, the scenarios in Iranian studies we've sought out, is that the Revolutionary Guards will take a stronger position than they already are. They are very much at the front, right, and center, but they would come into play, and Iran could turn into something of a military security oligarchy like Pakistan, where the Guards, as a military dictatorship, would come in to run the place in more ways than one, keeping the clerics with the Islamic veneer as a formal titular head. But they would come in times to play a greater role and consolidate the state, because they have much to lose if this system unravels too. What with controlling 60% of the economy, and that's just the official part, but then there is the dark part of the economy too. Smuggling and terrorism and other activities for which they've been responsible throughout the region and proscribed by the US, Bahrain, Canada, and UAE and other states. So, and of course, they are down and out. Their capabilities have been degraded after what we saw with Hamas, Houthis, and Hezbollah, but they're not yet out of the game. So the point is, they could consolidate to step in, and the state will dig its heels in to, continue shooting its population in cold blood.
All right. A little more on the complexity of Iran's domestic politics. Is the opposition to the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, necessarily an opportunity for Reza Pahlavi? I mean, do people want to replace clerical rule with monarchy once again?
A coterie does. Put it this way, Reza Pahlavi counts for something, but not everything. There is a groundswell of movement for him, that he could come in as something of an interim leader, and that it could be a constitutional monarchy, and that they could go back to the 1906 Belgian-style constitution that had been implemented, Shubhendru, after the first revolution in 1905-06. And it could become a constitutional monarchy, or perhaps evolve into a republic, which would be more inclusive, with greater freedoms and accountability by the leadership towards its populace. That is, I understand, blue sky thinking at present. We haven't even reached there, and I'm not jumping bridges before we reach them. But to answer directly, and I hope I have, he counts for something at present, but he's not the entire picture. You also have others in the diaspora, and also within Iran, who would want something of a democratic republic and a more inclusive liberal polity than the current dispensation, which is a theocracy and has been repressive for the last 47 years for the most basic fundamental freedoms that are not afforded to its citizens. And one could do this in the 80s and 90s of the last century. You can't keep a restive 21st century Gen Z or millennial population completely under your thumb. What with social media and news rolling 24 hours, who are patently aware of what conditions are in the outside world and who seek some of those very liberties, basic modicum of civil liberties and freedoms for themselves.
Right, Mr. Wagner, finally, to talk about the region and take a little macro view. The region of West Asia, Middle East has been very volatile in the past couple of years, particularly vis-a-vis the Gaza conflict. What do developments in Iran mean for the region?
To answer that, I would say like this. Envisage the fact that would that the current dispensation were to collapse, the immediate effect would be, and I'm going to say this, a sigh of relief among the GCC states and the Arabian Peninsula at large, because for all of them, Iran has always been the regional heavyweight. Okay, granted, it was even the heavyweight during Pahlavi Iran days when the Shah ruled the place. Now, that's just a patent fact that Iran was an emerging Indian Ocean medium-sized power back then too, in the 60s and 70s. But what happened after 79 is that Iran was a regional heavyweight and would continue to be so. But then it has created murder, mayhem, and chaos with terrorist proxies all over the region. And every one of the states in the Arab world has faced some form of Iranian terrorism, whether directly or indirectly, and they would see that the current dispensation and the guards and the regime collapsing would securitize and stabilize them at home. That cannot be denied, even if they cannot publicly bring themselves to concede that. They don't say so. But this is what is privately held across homes in Bahrain, Kuwait, Riyadh, Muscat, Doha, Dubai, Amman, Beirut, and elsewhere. That Iran has been a destabilizing force for them. And they have directly faced the wrath of the Iranian regime. It has nothing to do with Western bases or the Americans interfering or this, that, and the other. This is what these countries, GCC and non-GCC Arab states, would have us believe. And there is every reason to believe what they say.
On that note, Burzain Wagmer, many thanks for joining us on the News Hour and sharing your perspective.